The alarm on Threshold Station cut through the air like a scream, and I still remember the exact second it happened, because that was the moment everything changed for every human standing in that room. I am Renata Osei, and I was standing in the observation gallery above the grasp chamber when Vex Karun looked down at a small human girl and laughed at her in front of 60 recruits from a dozen different worlds. I did not know then that in the next 20 minutes, that laugh would travel across the galaxy and be remembered for years. Threshold Station was not a friendly place. It floated at the edge of neutral space, far from any sun, built by the Asuran Combine to test the young of every species they had discovered. If you passed the tests, you earned a place in their auxiliary forces. If you failed, you went home labeled as weak, and that label followed you for the rest of your life. Humanity had only been known to the wider galaxy for 18 months. The Combine had already decided what kind of species we were. They called us Tier 7, marginal, barely useful. A species with no claws, no armor, no natural weapons, sent to them by chance rather than by choice. Vex Karun ran the physical assessments that day. He stood 2.5 meters tall, with 4 arms and a body covered in thick plating that could survive gravity strong enough to crush a human skull. His voice came through a translator, flat and cold, without any warmth in it at all. 60 of you today, he said. Let us see how many make it past the first gate. The first gate was called the grasp chamber. Inside, magnetic plating created a pull more than double what a human body was built for. Recruits from other worlds struggled in there. Most humans could barely stand for 10 seconds before their legs gave out. That morning, 11 young humans had already been carried out on stretchers. Their dreams of service ended before they had truly begun. Then a small girl stepped up to the door. Her name was Mila Voss. She could not have been older than 16. She stood barely over 5 feet tall, with short hair and thin arms, and nothing about her looked like a soldier. Her family had escaped a terrible fire that swept through their city on Earth, and in that fire she had lost her father. She never spoke about it. She did not need to, because everyone on the station had read her file, even if they pretended they had not. Karun looked down at her, and something about her size made him laugh out loud. The sound echoed through the open comm channel, reaching every barracks on the station. Humans are weak, he said. Fragile bones, no claws, no plates to protect you. Your kind evolved by throwing rocks at things that were already dying. Is this truly what your species sends us? Nobody answered him. Nobody could. By every measure the Combine used, he was not wrong. We did not have thick skin or extra limbs. We lost in tests of raw strength again and again. Mila did not answer him either. She simply walked into the chamber, and the door sealed shut behind her. I was watching from the gallery with Anselm Reyes, the human liaison assigned to protect us from trainers who saw us as nothing more than disposable labor. The moment her name appeared on the screen, he went very still. She should not even be in there, he said quietly. She applied for supply and logistics work, not combat training. Then why is she being tested here? I asked. Because the logistics group was already full today, he said, and some clerk did not want to bother rescheduling a human child. The gravity plating inside the chamber powered up. I had felt that pull myself during my own testing 2 years before. It felt like the whole world had decided to sit on your chest at once. Most humans buckled within seconds. I expected the same from her. Instead, Mila bent her knees and lowered her body. She did not try to stand tall and proud the way the others had, only to be crushed under the weight. She dropped low, spread her stance wide, and held steady, the way someone does who has carried something heavy for a very long time. Later I learned that for 8 months, she had carried water containers up 6 flights of stairs, twice a day, in a building with no working elevator, because that was the only way to keep her mother and younger brother alive after the fire. Karun's amused posture shifted. For the first time, his full attention locked onto her. The second stage of the test began. The floor panels started to shift beneath her feet, testing balance under constant pressure. Recruits were supposed to walk a straight line across the chamber to the far wall. Almost nobody managed more than a step or two before falling. Mila took 4 steps, then 6. Then her palm slapped against the far wall, and she stood there, chest heaving, veins showing at her neck from the effort, but standing. The whole gallery went silent. Karun tried to explain it away. An unusual result, he said. Perhaps a burst of fear giving her strength. It means nothing on its own. Run it again, Mila called out, her voice shaking but clear enough for every microphone in the chamber to catch. Run it again, and watch what happens now that I understand the pattern. Here is something that Karun did not know, something none of the Combine species truly understood about us. Their bodies were built strong from birth. Ours were built to adapt. Millions of years of surviving ice, drought, and disaster, with no natural weapons and no natural armor, had shaped something in us that could not be measured by simple strength tests. It was not about how hard we could push. It was about how many times we could fail and still choose to try one more time. Karun restarted the sequence. This time, Mila did not enter the pull cold. She had watched the pattern of the shifting floor panels during her first run, and though the Combine called the pattern random, nothing truly built by anyone is completely random. Every system carries a trace of the mind that designed it. She had found that trace. She crossed the chamber in half the time of her first attempt, and by the end, she was not even breathing the hardest in the room. Karun's tail plating twitched, a small motion that Reyes later told me was the closest thing an Asuran showed to real surprise. That result is not possible after a single exposure, Karun said. It was not a single exposure, Mila answered. You just gave me a second one. The other human recruits in line were watching now, and something moved through them that had not been there before. Not quite hope yet, but their shoulders loosened, as if a weight they had been bracing against had lifted slightly. Reyes gripped the gallery railing so tightly his knuckles turned pale. Karun straightened to his full height. For a moment I thought he might end the test out of pride, mark it a fluke, and send her home in shame like the 11 before her. Instead, something shifted behind his eyes, as if he were recalculating everything he believed. Again, he said. Full sequence, no pause between stages. It was an unfair demand. A full sequence with no recovery time would leave even most Asuran recruits unable to continue. And Mila weighed perhaps 50 kilograms. Reyes started moving toward the door to step in. I caught his arm and stopped him. Wait, I said. Look at her face. She was not afraid. She was calculating, the way someone does when they already know the cost and have decided to pay it anyway. She stumbled twice during that final run. I remember the second fall most clearly, the sharp sound of her knee striking the panel below her, the way the entire gallery flinched together. Karun's hand hovered near the emergency shutdown, ready to end the test the moment it became too much. She stood back up. It was not graceful. It was not the kind of moment you see in old stories, where the hero rises with a burst of glowing strength. She got up the way I believe every human being who has ever survived something terrible gets up, awkward, frustrated, using the wall for support because her legs would not fully obey her, and she clearly did not care how it looked. She finished the sequence more slowly than her second attempt, but she finished it, and she reached the far wall and pressed both palms flat against it, holding herself upright through nothing but sheer refusal to fall one more time in front of him. The chamber powered down. Gravity eased back to normal, and half the humans in the gallery were crying, and I was one of them, and I did not care who saw it. Karun approached her slowly, his forearms crossed, his head tilted at an angle I had come to recognize among his kind, not the tilt of contempt, but the tilt of a creature quietly rebuilding everything it once believed to be true. Why, he asked, did you keep standing? Mila looked up at him, still favoring her injured knee, still breathing hard, a small line of blood on her lip from biting down during the second fall. Because you were still watching, she said, and I decided a long time ago that nobody gets to watch me quit. The recording of that moment spread across the station within the hour. From there it reached every human barracks, then every human ship, then eventually made its way back to Earth itself, playing on screens in cities still rebuilding from the disasters that had shaped so many of our lives. Humans are weak, the alien trainer laughed. Then the human girl stepped forward. Karen cleared her for advanced training that same day, over objections from 2 other officers who called the decision statistically unsound. Months later, I heard he had personally requested her for a higher program, and when someone asked him why, he gave an answer that did not translate cleanly into any human language. Reyes did his best to explain it to me, and the closest meaning was something like this. I have trained 1,000 species stronger than my own. I have never trained one that refused, on principle, to accept that it was beaten. But the story does not end there, because 2 weeks later, something happened that none of us expected, something that tested Mila far more than any gravity chamber ever could. The Combine ran a second and far more dangerous evaluation for recruits who had shown unusual promise. It was called the Endurance Trial, and it took place not in a controlled chamber, but on an unstable asteroid outpost far from the station, where the environment itself could not be adjusted or paused. 6 recruits were chosen from across the different species being tested that season. Mila was one of them. I was not permitted to join her on the outpost, but Reyes managed to secure a place on the support team, and through him, I later learned everything that happened. The outpost was a maze of narrow tunnels carved through rock with sections of low gravity, sections of extreme heat near old power cores, and sections flooded with a thin, breathable but disorienting gas meant to test focus under confusion. The recruits were given a single task: Find a signal beacon hidden somewhere within the outpost and activate it before their oxygen supply ran too low. The gas alone forced 2 recruits to abandon the trial within the first hour, their coordination failing so badly they could no longer stand. A third recruit, a young Asuran named Trask who had trained alongside Mila for 2 weeks, pushed through the heat sections too quickly and collapsed from exhaustion before reaching the halfway point. Mila moved differently. She did not rush. She used the lessons from the grasp chamber, moving low and steady through the disorienting gas, keeping her breathing controlled the way she had learned during her training sessions with Reyes back on the station. When the gas made the tunnel walls seem to shift and bend in front of her, she closed her eyes and counted her steps instead, trusting memory over sight. She reached the heat section nearly an hour behind the fastest recruit, a strong and confident competitor from a species known for incredible physical endurance, a young man named Corin Ashby who had trained with elite units on his homeworld before coming to Threshold Station. Corin had pushed far ahead early, moving with speed that no human could match. But speed was not the only thing that mattered on that outpost. Deep in the heat section, Corin's suit began overheating from moving too quickly through the narrowest part of the tunnels, where old machinery still radiated dangerous warmth. He was forced to stop and cool his systems, losing nearly 30 minutes he could not get back. Mila, moving slower but steadier, passed the point where he had stopped and kept going, never breaking her rhythm. She found the signal beacon deep within a collapsed section of the outpost, buried beneath fallen rock from an old structural failure. The beacon required physical strength to clear the debris blocking its access panel, strength that should have been beyond her according to every test the Combine had ever run on human recruits. She did not have that strength alone, so she did something none of the trainers expected. She used the tools available to her, wedging a length of metal support beam beneath the largest rocks and using it as leverage, distributing the weight instead of trying to lift it directly. It took her nearly 20 minutes of careful, exhausting work, her oxygen levels dropping steadily the entire time, but piece by piece, she cleared the path. When she finally activated the beacon, her oxygen reserve had only 11 minutes remaining. The recovery team reached her just in time, guided by her clear signal through the maze of tunnels. Corin arrived at the beacon site 4 minutes after her, having recovered from his overheating delay and pushed forward with everything he had left. He was breathing hard when he saw the beacon already lit and Mila sitting against the rock wall nearby, exhausted but smiling. "You beat me," he said, not with anger, but with genuine respect in his voice. "I did not beat you," Mila answered. "I just did not stop." Word of the endurance trial spread through the station even faster than the story of the grasp chamber, because this time it was not just one small victory against an unfair test. It was proof that human patience and careful thinking could match, and sometimes outlast, raw physical power. Recruits from other species began approaching Mila and the other human trainees, not with mockery anymore, but with genuine curiosity, asking how they trained their minds to stay steady when their bodies wanted to give up. Karun, who had once laughed at the idea of humans succeeding at anything physical, began quietly observing every human training session that followed. He never openly admitted he had been wrong, not directly, not in words. But he stopped calling human results anomalies. He started calling them patterns. 6 months after the endurance trial, Threshold Station held its first combined graduation ceremony, honoring recruits from every species who had completed the full training program. Mila stood among them, her knees still stiff on cold mornings from the injury she carried from that first day in the grasp chamber, a small reminder of everything she had pushed through to get there. When it came time for her to speak, she kept her words simple, the way she always did. "I was told humans are weak because we do not have claws or armor or natural strength," she said. "That is true. We do not have those things. But we have something else. We have the choice to keep standing after everything tells us to fall. We have the patience to move slowly when moving fast would only get us hurt. And we have people who refuse to let each other quit." She looked out at the crowd of humans and non-humans gathered together, and for a moment, the whole room was silent. "That is not weakness," she said. "That is simply a different kind of strength, one that took your tests a little longer to notice." The room erupted into sound then, not just from the humans present, but from recruits of every species who had come to understand, over months of shared training and shared struggle, exactly what she meant. Karun stood near the back of the crowd that day, arms crossed, watching quietly. When the ceremony ended and the crowd began to disperse, he approached Mila one final time. "I laughed at you once," he said. "I will not laugh again." Mila smiled at him, the same steady expression she had worn since that very first day in the chamber. "I know," she said. "That is why I kept standing." Years later, when new recruits from newly discovered species arrived at Threshold Station for their own assessments, the story of that day was still told among the trainers, not as a joke anymore, but as a warning and a lesson. Do not judge a species by the shape of its body or the sharpness of its claws. Judge it by how many times it is willing to fall down and still choose, without hesitation, to rise again. And somewhere among the new recruits standing nervously in line, waiting for their own turn to prove themselves, there was always at least one human, small and unremarkable by every measurable standard, quietly ready to show the galaxy exactly what that kind of strength truly looked like.